Hi, everyone. My name is Darcy Hoffman. I'm the Director of Business Services at Workforce Southwest Washington. And I just want to warn you, I'm multitasking. I'm running this slide deck and talking at the same time, which is not my strong suit. I'm already having technical difficulties because my slides aren't advancing. So bear with me. Oh, there we go. Okay, suddenly my keyboard does not work. That's fantastic. So I just want to give you a little bit of an overview of what Erin from Salsbury & Co. and I will be talking with you about today. We're going to be talking about job quality and how it can have an impact on your ability to recruit and retain your workforce. And we'll also be giving you some actionable steps to take to work on making continuous improvement in your own jobs within your own organizations. And then I will talk with you a little bit about some of the free resources that are available to you as small businesses in our community that can help you potentially reach new candidates and be able to support them as they are onboarding and training. So with that, let's dig in. Before I get started, I do want to talk with you a little bit about workforce boards because I think many people are not familiar with us, despite being around for a long time. And we're really trying to change that. And I think if I give you a little bit of background, it just might help set some context for today's conversation. So workforce boards were designated by federal legislation back in the 90s. Today it's called the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. We're nonprofits. There are 12 of us in the state of Washington. WSW, or Workforce Southwest Washington, our sort of territory that we serve is Clark, Cowlitz, and Wahkiakum counties here in Southwest Washington. And then there's over 550 workforce boards located throughout the country. Primarily, we have two customers, job seekers and businesses. So for job seekers, the federal allocation that we receive, in addition to, we are constantly applying for competitive grants through the state, through the Department of Labor, through private foundations. And we are building programs that are designed to help job seekers get the skills that they need to get into great jobs, be able to earn self-sufficient wages and support themselves and their families. And then on the flip side, which is really my role within the organization, business is also a priority customer of ours because without you, or I guess it's important to have you so that we can understand what your workforce needs truly are, because that is what helps us shape the programs that we design and that our partners then deliver to prepare job seekers for jobs with your companies. WSW, we are not a direct service provider, so we contract out the funding that we receive to various organizations in the community who actually do the work to work with job seekers to help get them prepared for jobs. And I will say by far our biggest investment is in the WorkSource centers. And that's important to know because I'm going to talk a little bit more about them at the end of my presentation today. They're really the boots on the ground, helping businesses and job seekers get connected every day. And they have all kinds of great resources that I'm going to share with you. Okay, so I want to start with talking a little bit about our quality jobs strategy. We started thinking about job quality really at the onset of the pandemic when we saw particularly how frontline workers were impacted just by the state of the economy and the pandemic and how they were treated. And we started researching different models that were taking shape around the country that other regions were doing to help promote job quality for workers in their communities. And we used a lot of that research and a lot of those best practices to help us shape our own strategy. And then from there, we spent a ton of time engaging with private sector companies, with workers and job seekers themselves, with community-based organizations, economic developers, local municipalities. Labor was another big partner in this initiative that I failed to list on our screen, but definitely a key partner in helping us think through job quality for people. So we did a lot of work with these organizations to help us land on a set of job quality standards that are most important to workers right here in Southwest Washington and the Portland metro area. We did a lot of this work with our workforce board partners in Portland and Clackamas. And historically, we've done a lot of work with them because we do share a labor market. We know that employers on both sides of the river have a workforce that lives on both sides of the river, and that employers really don't care whether a worker lives in Portland or Vancouver and vice versa. So we do a lot of this work together to make sure that we are creating workforce development programs that will truly meet the needs of our workforce region. So after all of that work, the standards that you see on your screen are where we landed. So we're talking about self-sufficiency wages, safe working conditions and worker engagement, predictable hours, comprehensive benefits, accessible hiring and onboarding practices, and then training and advancement opportunities. These were really the things that rose to the top in all of the conversations that we had with various stakeholder groups in our community. So we have since launched the entire job quality framework, which that Julia will make sure that you have when we're done with today's conversation. And it really defines what a quality job is for our region, incorporates all of the stakeholder feedback. And I think one of the important things just to call out in that stakeholder feedback is that it feels like really deep engagement with workers and with our community-based organizations who represent workers and our labor partners to understand what's important to people as they are looking for their next job opportunity. It provides a set of standards, and then underneath each standard offers a lot of guidance that employers can use to adopt to make improvements in these particular standard areas. Not all of the strategies are aimed at employers. There are a good amount of strategies that are aimed at workforce boards like us, for example. Like, what can we be doing to help improve the job quality landscape? What can policymakers be doing to help improve the job quality landscape? What can our community organizations, our K-12 systems, our higher education institutions, but there is a really good amount of things that employers can do, particularly to help improve job quality. It's sort of a toolkit, and it's kind of a choose your own adventure toolkit. So, for example, if you know as a company that you have not taken the opportunity or had the opportunity to really think through what a career path might look like within your own organization, you may just jump to that section and start working on some of those things. And I also want to offer that our team at WSW, there's myself and I have 2 other members on my team, are here to help support you in that. So when Julia sends out the job quality framework, I don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed or like you don't know where to begin. Just call us. We're happy to have a conversation with you to get to know your unique situation, your unique business, and help make some recommendations on where you might want to start. I want to, because I'm not going to go through the whole framework because it's quite meaty, I want to just give you some examples of the types of strategies offered in the framework for employers. So, for example, in the self-sufficiency wage category, you will see things like an opportunity to calculate the cost of turnover. And I think that can really help companies put a price tag on what turnover is actually costing them. And then potentially frees up some resources to make adjustments to lessen that turnover. There's information about conducting wage assessments and wage equity analysis. In the safe working conditions and worker engagement section, you will find strategies such as conducting employee engagement surveys to really get input from your workforce that can then help you improve the delivery of services within your own organization. There'll be strategies around mandatory overtime and making adjustments to that, shift work policies, and just providing more clear expectations to both job applicants, candidates, and your current workforce. For comprehensive benefits, you might see some strategies around subsidizing transportation for employees, depending on sort of where you're located in a community, maybe offering childcare or elder care or some sort of subsidy to help workers meet those very high expenses so that they can, be available to be at work and perform well for you. You will see strategies around building really clear internal career pathways, and also how to talk about those career pathway development opportunities, even maybe in a job posting, so that a potential applicant sort of knows what future opportunities might look like for them. And so I also want to talk with you about what other companies are doing, because I think sometimes when we talk about job quality, it either feels really ambiguous or maybe out of reach for an organization, or a lot of times people and companies will immediately gravitate to wages, because that's obviously the hardest needle for any company to move. And so I just want to share some real examples from local companies that we are working with here in Southwest Washington to give you an idea of maybe some of the smaller changes that we've seen organizations make that, really mean a lot to the people that work for them. So for example, we've got a small aerospace manufacturer here in Clark County who moved from a Monday through Friday 8-hour shift schedule to 410s. And they did that based on surveying their workforce to find out what their preferences were. And they do this survey regularly to make sure that their workers really still prefer that 410 shift. So far that has been the preference, so they have maintained it. They also don't do much mandatory overtime. They try to offer it to those who want it first. And if they still have an overtime need, Friday is sort of their line. They won't ask their employees to come in on the weekends because they want to make sure that folks have an opportunity to rest and recharge. So that's sort of a small change that I think gives workers some ownership, and, they feel valued and heard and are working a shift that now works better for their situation. This is kind of a bigger one, but we have a large healthcare provider in the region who, over the last couple of years, they have stood up all kinds of registered apprenticeship programs. And you can see some of the job titles that they're training folks in. And this has been great because it does provide their internal workers an opportunity for advancement. And it also provides workers and people who maybe wouldn't be able to take time away from work to attend a full-time 1 to 2 year training program, let's say at a community college, to become a medical assistant. Many adults have families and responsibilities, and they need to go to work. They're really not able to take time away to go to school. And apprenticeship has been a way that this organization has been able to allow people to earn while they learn and move into better, higher paying positions within their organization. We also have an electronics manufacturer in Clark County that works really closely with a high school that's located very near to their campus. And so they do a lot of work inside of the classrooms doing different work-based learning projects with students. And they're building relationships with these students. And so when they are ready to graduate high school, they sort of have a ripe and ready talent pool of entry-level workers that are familiar with their organization, familiar with them, familiar with their work. And that has proved to be a really good model for them to be able to identify a new pool of young workers. We also have a company, they work in the energy sector, and they do contract service. And so they are working with the PUDs, the energy companies themselves who contract with them to do their customer service, to help create pathways from doing customer service with this organization to actually getting a job in that PUD department, which for some can be a better opportunity. That same organization has done a lot of work to interview and survey and collect information from their workers on what they like about the job, what they like about the company, and also what they don't like, so that they can use that information to make necessary changes to make things better for people. This is kind of a big one, but there is a larger high-tech manufacturer also in Clark County. They started a program where they're offering weekend-only work, and it's aimed at college students. So these opportunities, they're Friday through Sunday. I think they're 8-hour shifts. That has also worked well for them at attracting college students into these positions. And I don't have this on the screen, but they're actually offering full benefits for these workers as well. So this has been a great way for them to meet the additional demand that they have and tap into a talent pool that, normally wouldn't have been able to work for them for the normal schedules that they hire for. We have another food manufacturer that started up a two-way language learning program. This one's really cool. So they have a large portion of Spanish-speaking workers. So the English-speaking employees are learning Spanish at the same time the Spanish-speaking employees are learning English. And I know that this is something that particularly has made the Spanish-speaking workforce feel really valued, because I think normally when we think about teaching employees English skills on the job, it is just about that. It's about learning English for the job, and not much consideration is given to the English speaking employees to learn the other language. So that's kind of a cool one. Generally speaking, we have seen companies who've implemented longer or just non-traditional break times to allow for their employees to maybe pick kids up from school and get them to their next point of care and then come back to work. And the next example, this is the only example I have that's not local, but I thought it was so cool. I saw it on the news like a year ago. Kawasaki in Lincoln, Nebraska, they had just a huge demand, huge influx of work, and they opened up a whole extra production line. It only operates Monday through Friday between 9 and 2, and their target is parents. And so it allows a parent to see their kid off to school, but then also be available when kids get home and off the bus to greet them, so that childcare is not an issue. And the story that I saw on the news, this production line, it was predominantly women. And these are really great jobs, really great benefits. Kawasaki's getting what they need. The workforce is getting what they need. And just kind of a great example of some creativity. Let's see, for benefits, I can't see the bottom of my screen because I have oh, there, I can move it. We have a couple of companies in our region, actually, all in the manufacturing space, who are offering either a discount at certain childcare facilities or credit at certain childcare facilities. Childcare has been a really big barrier, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, to many people being able to access the workforce. There's just a broad shortage of childcare that is available to workers, and it's also incredibly unaffordable for many workers. So we are seeing more companies kind of think creatively about what they might be able to do to help support childcare for their workforce. Okay, now I want to talk with you all about some of the services that are available to you at WorkSource. So like I said in the beginning of my presentation, WorkSource is by far our biggest investment in workforce programming in Southwest Washington. We invest in a variety of community-based organizations throughout the region, but a lot of our funding goes into funding the staff and the programs at WorkSource. WorkSource has an office in Vancouver, and then they also have one up in Cowlitz County in Kelso. All of these types of resources and services can be accessed through both centers. And actually on your screen, you'll see contact information from Susan Milkey at WorkSource, and we'll make sure that you have this. Susan is probably your best first stop at getting connected to these resources if you're interested now or when the time comes. But I think first and foremost for WorkSource and their business services team, they can help ensure that all of your jobs are advertised publicly. And by publicly, they have their own statewide job board that they will use to post your jobs publicly. They're also very, very well connected to the community-based organizations in our region and the nonprofits who are serving really specific populations. And they'll make sure that your jobs get in front of those organizations as well. So an example might be, we have a nonprofit in Clark County, they're called Partners in Careers, or PIC. They really specialize in serving immigrants and refugees and veterans and young adults. WorkSource can help make sure that your job opportunities find their way to Partners in Careers who can advertise them to the people that they are serving. Another one might be an organization like Fourth Plane Forward, also a nonprofit, very well connected in the Latina community, and can make sure that your jobs get in front of those communities. So WorkSource is a great place at the very least to make sure that your jobs are advertised to help you reach a broader audience of applicants that maybe you haven't been able to tap in the past. So that's first and foremost. But they do have some other more financial beneficial programs that are specifically designed for employers. The first one is our on-the-job training program. So this is for new hires that you're bringing on who are eligible for our programs. And it's basically a partial wage reimbursement that goes back to the employer at the end of, say, a 1 to 6 month training period while you are onboarding this person and making sure that they get the skills that they need to perform the job effectively. WorkSource can reimburse you half of their gross wages for the first 1 to 6 months to help compensate you for the added time that it takes to train and onboard folks. So that's a really popular program. They also can help make sure that you are getting access to the work opportunity tax credit for anyone that you may be hiring who's eligible for this tax credit. And there's a number of eligibility categories. I won't go into all of them, but it could just be you're hiring someone who is coming from a low-income family. Could be that you're hiring someone who has recently been released from incarceration, or maybe a disabled veteran. There are all kinds of categories, but WorkSource can help you build this tax credit application form into your hiring process so that you don't miss the opportunity on anyone that you hire, because this is one of those things that you can't tell by talking with someone or going through an interview who's eligible for this program. And so it's really important that you just build the form into your hiring process, and WorkSource can help you do that. They also have access to a federal bonding program. So if you're hiring someone that you may feel poses a risk to money or property within your organization, there is a free federal bonding program. So you can basically take out an insurance policy that would then come into effect should anything happen. Which, by the way, I think this is still true. I haven't checked in a couple of years. I don't think the state of Washington has ever actually had to pay a bond out. So that's a good sign, which means the risk maybe wasn't so risky. But that is definitely a program that we have access to. We also have a program called Work Experience, which is, it looks just like an internship, but I think typically we think of internships for either high school students or college students. This program is really aimed at either young adults or adults who maybe have been out of the workforce for a period of time and are just sort of coming back into it. But WorkSource can fund their wages and the liability insurance for a number of hours while you're getting to know this person and giving them some skills that they may need to get back into the workforce. And then last, the example on the screen is our veteran population. WorkSource has specialized staff in their centers with access to veterans in the community. And they would love to work with you to help find and hire veterans. And I would say, in addition, they have resources and access to other priority populations. So if you're interested in hiring people with disabilities or people coming out of incarceration, WorkSource can help you access those sort of priority populations as well. So Susan is going to be a fantastic resource. If she's not exactly the right person for your business or your industry, she will get you to a coworker on her team who is. But I would start with her. And then the last couple programs I'm going to buzz through because I am at time. I think it's worth mentioning our incumbent worker training program. So this is actually a program that WSW as a workforce board is now operating, and it's really based on demand. So I'm sharing this information with you today. I don't currently have a budget for incumbent worker training, but if I am hearing from enough companies that there is demand and there is interest in doing this, that's really helpful. That type of information helps me identify resources to be able to allocate to the program. So it's essentially a co-investment. It's WSW co-investing alongside with you to upskill a current employee. So this one's not for new hires. This is for your existing workforce. So could be to upskill a current employee, or better yet, a group of existing employees. So maybe you have a new piece of equipment, a new technology, a new process that people need to learn, and you want to bring in a training vendor to teach them this new skill. Or maybe you want to send them to some classes at Clark College. It could be anyone. Who the organization who does the training is up to you. The employer is really kind of in the driver's seat of this one. But it's basically us investing alongside of you to help fund this training for these workers. And we're looking for training opportunities that are of high enough quality, that are teaching a technical skill set to the point where it warrants a pay increase for your employee or employees at the completion of training. So it's important for me to hear about opportunities that you may be considering, because like I said, then that kind of helps me understand, okay, there is demand. I need to find resources for this. And I can typically do that fairly quickly. And then the last one, this is normally a job seeker program, but I thought it's really important to share with you all because a lot of the investment that we have in WorkSource goes directly to job seekers to train them in some of the fields that I have listed on the screen. So we want to invest in training for people to find jobs in high growth, high demand industries. So some of these occupations are things we commonly send people to school for, but there's a lot more that we can do. And if we know we have an employer partner on the other side of things that's saying, I really have a demand for welders, and if you could create 5 more, I would hire them in 6 months. We want to know that, and we have the resources to help support developing those welders for you. So I thought this is an important one, I think, to share with employers, because you are the demand, you create the demand, and that's what drives us to shape these workforce investment programs. So it's really important that we understand exactly what it is that you need. And so I think with that, I'm turning it over to Erin Rowe with Salsbury.
Great, thanks so much. Hi, everyone. I am Erin Rowe from Salsbury. I am a payroll and human resources specialist. Salsbury offers several kinds of consulting services. We have a business management service team that helps people starting businesses. They need advice on management structure, and then human resources services, whether that be anything from doing recruiting to advising on, conflict resolution or creating policies, writing handbooks, any of those. And then we also offer bookkeeping, business bookkeeping, including payroll and medical billing services for any local businesses that need them. We're working mainly in Southwest Washington. We have some more North clients, some Oregon clients, and provide them whatever they need for keeping their business going. So if you'll click to the next slide. So I kind of want to start by talking about going into hiring, retaining, and recruiting employees, looking at it from an employee perspective about what is the workforce looking for in a job. And that's important because I think in the last few years, especially and across all industries, we've seen more and more challenges with recruiting and retention. And that can look a lot of different ways depending on the circumstances in the industry, whether that be you're getting the people, your candidates applying to your position are consistently not qualified. They're not candidates that match the par of work that you want. Or whether that goes into you've hired an employee who you think is a great candidate, but you're having a hard time with retention. People who are hired and they go through the hiring process and you spend so much money on their recruitment, and then for some reason or another, they quickly are not a good fit and your turnover costs are becoming really high. So I kind of think a good way to start addressing those consistent issues and addressing changes to make if you are going into a period where you need a lot of recruiting is looking at what the workforce and your potential employees value about a job right now and what's leading their decision making. Starting with compensation, for most people, a very, very important thing, if not the most important element of deciding whether or not to take a job. They are looking for a pay rate or an hourly salary status that matches what they competitively expect from their industry. And there's resources, I think WSW has them for determining that benchmarked wage amount within the quality framework. It sounds like there's resources for that. Getting like a general benchmarked industry idea of what fair wages are, what that matches, any of that. That is an important element of setting wages. But then on top of that, employees choosing a job, going into a workforce, going into a job applying phase in their time, it's important to them that they feel like they're being compensated, not just for the job they're doing or the job they were doing, but that they are being fairly compensated for any additional education they've done, training they've done, if they have licenses or credentials that they've put money towards and time towards developing or growing or adding to their resume, they want to feel like that's being recognized as something that gives them a higher opportunity for compensation. And that's something pretty important for people to think about going into recruiting. Inside a pay range, maybe candidates are looking for something that they feel is fair, not just to the job and not just to the industry, but fair to who they are as an individual. And that's something they're thinking about. Candidates are also usually valuing a work-life balance. And that's kind of a broad term, and it's going to be a broad term for everyone because it's such an individualized issue for people. Everyone's personal life, work-life balance needs are going to look different because everyone is different. You know, some people are going to be juggling children and a family, and some people don't have that element, but they have other needs in their personal life that they want to feel like they can enjoy. So we want to build a quality job. Candidates want to know that they will have that ability to have a personal life or a family life or anything like that. And some ways to show that you're open to that and fulfill that are things like having predictable schedules, predictable as in they can regularly know how much they're working, what their hours are like, and when show up. Having options on the same time, though, for flexible schedules. And what that can mean is if you have a candidate, an employee who is looking for some kind of schedule that allows for their personal life, whether that be, you know, working late on one day so they can leave early to pick up their child the next day, or working 4 10-hour shifts instead of 5 8-hour shifts. That's a way to sort of show that you respect your employees' time outside of work. And that increases job satisfaction and gets you good candidates for your postings as well. Of course, though, in a lot of industries, jobs, teams, it's not possible to give the ideal kind of flexible work-life balance everyone wants. And it's understood, of course, not every employer can offer things, even if they want to offer them because of the structures of what job they're doing. So when you're thinking about recruiting, find a way to work within the structure of your own business. How can you create space for your employees to have a work-life balance and still have that match your needs as a business and maybe their wants and needs as a candidate? And then considering that going into your recruitment process is a way to make your job specifically seem more appealing to potential candidates and quality candidates. Employees, while job hunting, are also looking for benefits, and they want to. There's a lot of ways to combine benefits that match the needs and wants of your employees. And I say that because oftentimes we work with small businesses and things like health insurance are incredibly expensive and often not accessible to small business that, for example, has maybe a lot of part-time employees or something like that. So I encourage you, when you're thinking about how to attract people with your benefits, to think outside the box a little bit. Is there ways with maybe less expense that you can provide a benefit for travel allowances, a benefit for your commute, allowances for maybe a discount, a partnership with a business that gets them a discount for things like childcare or the clothing that they need, the accessories they need, working with education so that they have benefits that have a tuition reimbursement for education. There's a lot of ways to provide benefits that are going to be appealing to candidates that don't end up causing more problems or not matching what your business can provide. Even if something like health insurance is much too expensive, I encourage you to think creatively about what benefits will be more accessible. Could you offer them access to a 401k plan that they contribute to with no match? Even that kind of creativity is a way to offer your employees a benefit to the job outside of just compensation and make them really feel like they're getting more value out of the job. And then candidates want to also have opportunities for development, whether that is having a really clear structure to promotion, to career development, to their changing in the company and advancement within the company. But that can also be things like mentorships or education, training, whether that be from a coworker or someone else in your business or in your organization, or that's just through support of telling your employee, yes, we would love to give you this time to pursue this further and make connections on your behalf. Employees do want to feel like if they're committing to or deciding on a job, that job isn't just a now benefit to them. It's something they can see themselves staying with for a long time, whether that be because it's a supportive environment or it's an opportunity for them to grow overall. And then positive company culture is something employees value about a job, pretty subjective, but it is something that over and over again, employees are saying if they see that positive company culture, it's a big selling point for them going forward on either applying for jobs or accepting positions. So I would say generally, and we'll go into this more, but a positive company culture, as the employee recognizes it, is really a company that has collective successes that the employees can feel shared at, and they are recognized for their work, for their collaborations, and they can really feel like they're part of the culture and not just working towards something they don't feel like they're benefiting from, whether that be through concrete successes financially, or whether that just be through feeling like they're part of a culture that does have those success rates. So this is kind of generally going forward when you're thinking about improving or changing your recruitment and retainment processes. These are the kind of things your employees are thinking about. So these are the kind of things businesses and organizations and groups for the industry should be thinking about. We should be putting ourselves in the same mind space so our needs and wants match, both from the employee standpoint and from the employer standpoint. Darcy, if you could click on to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so going into recruiting, first step for making sure that you're getting good candidates leading into an engaged workforce, starting with recruiting. And especially, I think, going into these kind of projects and like the more and more changes are going to be happening regionally with increased work. It's really important that people have strategies for recruiting, as they're going to need a lot of either new employees or focused recruiting for advanced roles. So we usually start, we want everyone to have a written job description. What is the role they're trying to fill, the job they're trying to fill, have internally documents acknowledging what the role requires, what the role will be finishing, and then the workaround of how that role fits within your company. And then from that, you can jump off into making a really effective job advertisement. And a job advertisement, whether that is literally through an advertisement. Maybe you're using standard advertising venues like, whether that be billboards or web advertising, or, the more standard job posting websites such as LinkedIn, Indeed.com, and the many other avenues out there. You'll want to start out with like a good quality job ad and posting. Includes elements of describing your organization, honestly, including your culture, values, mission, and who you are in the community. Make sure that candidates know who they're looking to work for. Include information about the role, summarize job duties, responsibilities, skills, and then what that job would look like for the person, the nature of the role, the patterns, the schedule, all of that. And then be concise about that as much as possible. So include a general idea, but no need to go overboard and include details that aren't useful before they've accepted the job. Set your qualifications and requirements for candidates in the job advertisement. A big effect that's going to have is you're going to be eliminating people, ideally, from applying to the job who are clearly not qualified or don't match the requirements and qualifications. If you're not including qualifications such as a level of education or credentialing or licensing that your candidates are required to have, or even that you highly prefer they have, you are going to be getting a lot of people applying who don't realize that's what they need. And so setting those standards up front for this is what the job requires, qualification-wise or otherwise, to be a good fit. Setting those standards up front is going to get you better quality candidates and is going to get you, hopefully, someone who you hire who will fit that role more successfully. And then generally in that job advertisement, kind of an overall goal of it is to establish an expectation of what you're going to be expecting from this person filling the role. The expectations from the candidates, your current staff, and the ideal future staff. Make sure that they understand what type of person would be a good fit for the role and within your organization. A lot of different organizations have different kind of ways of doing business, whether that be from work environment to social expectations, the kind of work you do, the kind of team you want to have. A lot of people use core values in a way to talk about this. If you're saying that a core value of your business is integrity, you expect to hold all your employees to a standard of integrity, and you commit to that yourself as an organization. Those are the kind of things that it's really valuable to include when establishing an expectation in the job advertisement for what you're looking for and what type of person is going to be a good fit for the eventual hiring, ideally moving forwards. So yeah, that's how to build a good, effective job advertisement, which is really important to be intentional about this step. It's kind of a loss of time if you're not being intentional about that job advertisement and you're getting candidates that you can immediately disqualify. And if you are consistently not getting candidates applying, or you're getting candidates applying where a huge percentage of them clearly don't match, then take a step back and think, why did this happen? And how can we make a more effective job advertisement that's really reaching more of what we wanted to be getting from that job advertisement? I always encourage you to take a step back and reevaluate if things aren't working. And this is a good step to do that before you've gone too far in the process. Darcy, next. Great, thank you. So once you've recruited or you have a recruiting pool and you've given an offer and think you've moved forward with one candidate or a few, it's important to create strong onboarding procedures that you're then going to hold yourself to in the long term, or as long as you're in this project and hiring these types of people in this project. So we want to start with the goal of onboarding really is you're successfully and efficiently communicating objectives. We usually do onboarding in the first 3 days, not just because some of those documents have it legally required to be fulfilled in the first 3 days, but we think it's really important to be establishing those objectives up front. New employees should understand what is the objective of their role, what is their department, how are they structured, and what's the objective of the work they're doing, and then the organization overall. How does it operate? What are we working on? What are we trying to get done? What is the emotional and long-term objectives of the organization they've joined? And the more details that are in the onboarding are going to kind of hammer in those details to the new employee so they can feel more confident going forward. Onboarding is also, of course, going to include the compliance paperwork that everyone has to do for onboarding, including the I-9 document, W-4 document, any kind of policies and procedures within your industry that are required to be signed and completed. We find that doing those in person during the first 3 days of work gives not only your assurance as an employer that it got done for compliance, but it gives employees an opportunity to ask questions and really feel like they understand what they're signing. At the same time, we have them complete that compliance paperwork. It's usually important that you address the employee handbook. And I can't state enough how much for our clients and overall, an employee handbook is a really, really essential part of successfully running a business with engaged and retained employees. Having a thorough employee handbook is going to include expectations for the employee, but also expectations that the employee can hold the employer to. You know, what are you promising to your employees? And alternatively, what do you need from them to promise to you? So employee handbook gives you an opportunity to write that down. We usually include in the ones we create a section for a code of conduct and a section for the company promise. You know, what do we promise collectively that we're providing our customers, and how do we follow through on that promise? And following through on that promise usually involves following the other policies we've written, whether that be details like how do you call out of work? What's your sick time? How do you follow the rules of requesting expense reports? Kind of those nitty gritty details, but also like the core values of the organization. How do we commit to communicating? We usually include information about people within the organization, whether that be management to employee and the interaction between. How do we commit to talking to each other and communicating? Open communication as much as possible is something that we find if you mention that up front, that's going to lead to it actually following through and being successful. And including those sections in the employee handbook is a consistent way to get that across. And then actually following through and explaining to people about what the handbook contains is another way to make sure that actually gets followed through on. And we usually include it in our onboarding as a sit down time to talk to employees about here's how we operate and here's what you're going to be looking forward to at this organization, and here's how you can be successful. After onboarding and throughout onboarding, we find it important to include a training schedule for new employees and then communicate the importance of following that plan, not just to the new employee, but to all the other people they're going to be interacting with, whether that be trainers, managers, other departments, parties involved, like, you know, other departments they may need to be interacting with, people they're meeting, any administrative parties that need to be getting paperwork done with them or helping them get set up in their new role. It's important to build a schedule and then communicate with all of those people. Here's how we can make sure this employee is set up for success. They're not grasping at straws when they start. They know exactly what's going to be happening going forward for their schedule. And by the end of a predetermined training period, they have a good idea of what this job is going to be like going forward and how they can complete what they need. Also, they have a good idea of who they can go to for when they have questions, whether that be their, HR individual they worked with or a manager, a coworker. They know exactly who to go to when they do have questions, because in a new job, you're going to have questions, of course. We also make sure that within our onboarding and in the first week, setting out strong and making the new employee feel welcome is really important. The small ways we do that can be a combination depending on the business. Introductions with coworkers and a tour are kind of an easy way to start. But we've also seen a lot of welcoming procedures like having lunch with a new employee or giving them time during their first day to try out things that maybe they wouldn't normally get to do in their business. Giving them a welcoming first day or first week where they feel like they're kind of eased into it and everyone wants them to be there. If you've made the decision to hire this person, they should be accepting the job. And then even within the first week or the training period, they should understand and enjoy that you as the business are confident and happy you made the decision to choose this individual. And kind of think about, how do you translate that feeling? How do you make sure that even if you feel great about this decision, the new employee actually knows that? How do they know, yeah, I feel like this was a great decision for me and I'm excited to be successful with this new company? Make sure any of those feelings or thoughts from your management are communicated successfully so that everyone does feel confident going into the new collaboration. Darcy, next slide. Okay, and then I see so often, and I'm sure any other small businesses see how much the cost of turnover can be a huge issue for businesses. The cost of turnover coming not just from losing losing that knowledge basis from employees, but the cost of recruitment, the cost of transitioning, the cost of retraining, the cost of any lost business that comes with losing good engaged employees. So there is a lot of ways that businesses can be keeping it in mind that it is important to foster employee engagement and then retain those engaged employees. And there's a few ways to do that. And I want to reiterate, within these general ideas that we recommend, there's lots of ways to accomplish this. And as a business, I encourage you to think creatively. If we want to build this type of culture, but we have limitations due to the nature of our work, how can we kind of think around the box? Think outside the box, sorry. How can we think about, in what way can we build this culture that will still allow us to finish our work and won't be too much of a financial struggle, but will still complete a goal of making your employees feel more engaged and more happy to come to work every day? An easy way, and I think a really successful way to start with that, is focusing on building a culture of recognition and appreciation. This is usually, when I've seen it most successfully, done through programs specifically that allow employees to recognize and celebrate each other's successes. Some examples of that I've seen are like a call out process. Employees can send in, oh, I want to call out my coworker for being really successful in this project. You were great. And that is, either sent to an employee directly, published. I've seen places where they put that up on the wall, the call outs of the month, who did really, really well. Or that can be more sort of motivated in a more structured way, tiers of successful employees, or people get to compensate each other and get prizes when they've had successes or when they've recognized another employee. And then it is important for management to also foster that kind of culture where employees feel like when they're successful, they're recognized for that. And when there's a collective success, everyone gets to enjoy that recognition and they feel appreciated for what they do. So this is a good way that I think very quickly and successfully increases employee engagement and builds a great positive employee energy and company culture. And it's a great way to do that without really spending too much money and limiting yourself. Even just thinking as a management team or as an individual, how can I make sure my employees feel like they're more appreciated and recognized? Just asking yourself that question within the nature of what you do can really give you good answers about how to build that feeling more in the office or the work site or wherever you're doing your work. Another important way to build employee engagement and then retain that employee engagement is being open to employee feedback and then giving employees a way to share that feedback. And then once they've shared the feedback, make sure they know you appreciate that they felt brave enough, or if they need bravery or not, that they could share that. And there's ways to be open to employee and feedback while you have employees, that it isn't like an exit interview situation. Keeping open communication is a great way to make sure employees know that you're open to feedback, and giving them an opportunity to communicate, whether that be through regular one-on-ones with management, whether that be through having a suggestion box, or just opening up employee surveys regularly to your staff. Just making sure that however your business is structured, employees have a way to, if they want to share feedback, they have a way to communicate with their manager or upper management or wherever that change is going to happen. If there is issues going on and you're seeing a lack of retainment of good employees, sometimes the problem is that employees don't feel like they can ask for help or share concern because there's a limitation on how they communicate. So make sure that you're open to that feedback and you're giving them an actual way to share that. And then once you've received feedback, show that you're open to change. A good example of this is if you are the type of business that regularly does things like employee surveys, whether that be once a quarter, once a year, make sure to follow that up and be clear with your employees. We really appreciate your feedback and that you participated, and we are actively reviewing the feedback and determining whether or not we want to make changes. Make sure they know that it's not they're not just talking into a void. You're taking into account what they say and thinking about how you can make changes going forward in a way that will make things easier and more successful for everyone. Another great to retain employees is to establish consistent policies and procedures and then follow through on those consistent policies and procedures. Make sure your procedures are logical and intentional and then consistently uphold those. I say that because that can kind of lose you engagement. If employees don't feel like they can anticipate how you'll respond to things, or if employees don't feel like they can be reliably able to rely on their management or the business because you're not consistently following what you said you would follow, that's going to lead to distrust. And that's going to lead to a lack of that engagement and that motivation that really leads to efficient employees and good success. So make sure that not only are you creating policies and writing them and then sharing them with your staff, but that you're following through on upholding those so your employees do feel like you're trustworthy and they can be relied upon. And sometimes those policies aren't things employees are going to like, that's annoying for them to follow them. But that doesn't mean they're not very important, and it's not beneficial to you to make sure your employees know that when you say you expect something, they do have to follow through on those expectations. And that's going to build you a stronger workforce where the people are getting behind the policies that you're later doing down the line. Offering relevant and beneficial benefits is a great way to retain employees, to get them and then keep them engaged. We talked a bit before about how benefits can look really different for different organizations because of your needs or nature of work or financial restraints. So it's really important when you're engaging your employees to make sure that you're considering, are these benefits accessible to your employees? Are they able to access them? Do they qualify for them? And then is it something that meets their needs and preferences? If you're offering some kind of benefit that only applies to a few of your employees or is only beneficial to a few of your employees because of their personal lives or who they are, what they do, then reconsider that. Why are you offering something if you feel like it isn't meeting the needs and preferences of a large portion of your workforce? Maybe there is a better option for a benefit that would be more available and valuable to them than keeps them engaged. And then just demonstrating honest and clear communication to your staff really encourages mutual respect and trust, and honest communication goes both ways. Just really demonstrating that as management, as your owner, whoever is communicating consistently with the staff, make sure that it's honest, clear, and consistent is a great way to build a good, positive work culture and a good way to make sure your employees are engaged and they feel like they're valued inside your organization. And then they take that energy and serve it to you in a way that you're having more collective successes. Darcy, next slide. That's kind of a broad overview of some strategies that we talk about with our clients for recruiting, retaining, and then keeping engaged employees. And I think we're opening it up at this point to questions from you guys. So if you have questions, feel free to ask further.
Oh, thank you everyone for participating in our workshop today. We look forward to continuing serving your businesses here in Washington State with Washington Apex Accelerator. Take care. Goodbye.